A podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design. All right, welcome back to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle Evans, and today we have an interesting episode. So, usually I would have Eva, my co-host, with us, but she is in the throes of wedding planning along with product launches and many other things. So it is just me today, but do not worry. Have some guests that we are getting lined up. So we've had some awesome guests over the past couple episodes. So if you haven't checked those out, go back and take a listen to some of the previous episodes that we've had. We've had some awesome discussions, and we have some awesome ones coming up. So I am very, very excited about that. So stay tuned. And of course, look forward to having Eva back soon as well. But today, got an interesting and hopefully fun episode, kind of a grab bag of questions and thoughts on a variety of topics. So no one specific topic, but we have questions that come in from time to time that we get asked in our roles on this podcast, just in various forums, whether it's on Twitter or other places. And so this episode is going to be kind of a grab bag of questions and thoughts and discussions. So if you have thoughts or questions you want to chat about, hit us up on the social medias. Best place is probably on Twitter. You can find me at Kyle Larry Evans. You can also find Eva on Twitter, and you can find our Product by Design, which I believe is prod_by_design. I'll double check that, but I'm fairly confident that is our Twitter handle on the Twitterverse. I'm just checking that right now, so you can tell how often. Yes, okay. So it is prod by design with some underscores in there. So you can hit us up there, and we'll have our social media intern, which is also myself, responding back to you and checking that out. So first item for discussion, first question is a fun one. How much do you focus on your competitors? So this is a great question and an interesting topic, because a lot of us are in a variety of different spaces when it comes to competition and competitors. So the answer really depends on where you are, both as far as industry goes, as far as your company goes. And, for me, I think the first thing is it's important to understand your competition to varying degrees, depending on where you are, within your company, where your company is within the market, where your industry is, but not to be defined by your competition. So with that, there's a couple things that come to mind with this topic. So first off, I do think it is important to understand your competition. I don't think any of us can turn a blind eye to our competition. But with that, it's important to understand it may not always be who you think it is. So it's easy to look out at competition and define that as other companies just like you. So that's like the very easiest definition of competition. When we think of, some of the big technology companies, it's easy to think of their competition as the other companies, within their exact same space doing very similar things. So when we think about Facebook, Facebook's competition is other social media platforms. So things like Twitter or TikTok, or some other some of the nascent social media platforms as well, potentially. But what else is there for that Facebook is competing with? It's certainly competing with other platforms as well. So Apple and Facebook are constantly competing in a variety of different areas. Facebook is competing in not just social media, but also in ads and attention. And so that kind of opens up the scope for the competitors and the competitive landscape. We mentioned TikTok there for a second. TikTok is a super fascinating company. And when you think about TikTok and all the companies that it is a competitor with, it just becomes absolutely fascinating, because it's not just a social media platform, but it is competing for the attention of so many different groups and so many different users. And that puts it in direct competition with just about everybody. So not just Facebook and other social media platforms, but competing with YouTube, competing with Netflix, competing with possibly games and other things. So those are all ways to look at competition. So that's kind of the first thing, is understand the competition, who it is. It may not always be who you think it is, and it doesn't always have to just be technology either. So when it comes to Facebook, again, the sports, and I'm not talking about watching sports, but I'm talking about like actually playing sports, doing stuff outside, going hiking or biking, like actually taking time away from technology is a direct competition to Facebook, who wants your attention and time. And so doing things outside of their platform is a competitor. So, how can they get you to spend time on their platform? And anything that kind of takes away from that is competition. So understanding, two, it's understanding your users and your problem. So, I think it's important to understand your competition, but it's even more important to understand your users and their problems. And, going back to the second part of what I said at the very beginning, you can't be defined by your competition. You really need to be defined much more about what is the problem that you're trying to solve, either as a product, as a feature within a product, or as an organization, as a company, as a business. So that starts with understanding the users that you are serving, the problems that they have, and how it is that you are solving those problems. If you're only focused on competitors and features, then you really lose sight of what it is that the problem you're solving truly is. And we've seen so many examples of that, where companies just get focused on competition instead of what is the real problem to solve. We talked about this on a podcast episode not that long ago, the proliferation of stories across applications. So Snapchat came out with the idea of stories, these ephemeral posts that disappear after a period of time, usually 24 hours. Very cool idea. And then other people looked at that and started copying it. And that can make sense for different users of other products. And I think it does make sense, in other places. So, a place like Instagram, a place like Twitter. It doesn't make sense in every context, though. Again, I've said it so many times where I'm looking at LinkedIn, stories, disappearing posts. It's an interesting thing where you get kind of this Me Too feature creation, and you kind of lose sight of your users and the problems that you're solving for, and really you get focused on competition, the features that they're building, And that's how we end up with stories everywhere. And it can be unfortunate. Again, we saw Twitter take away fleets recently, which is unfortunate because I think that it was it made sense there. But again, I wrote about it in Product Thinking, my newsletter. So you can go check out some thoughts there. On Killing Features was the name of that post. So I will link to it in the show notes. But that made sense for Twitter to kill that feature because they were focusing on the main things that they're solving for their users. And while stories or fleets for Twitter may have made sense in some ways, they are more focused on what is making more sense for people using Twitter right now, which happens to be social audio rooms. So that was the second thing. So, understand your competition. Don't be defined by it. Understand your users and their problems more. But do leverage ideas from competitors and anywhere else that makes sense in order to solve those problems for your users. So, you don't necessarily have to reinvent things in order to solve problems. So this goes back to some of the heuristics of good usability and design. So you can go over to the Nielsen Norman Group, which has the 10 heuristics for usability. And we did, of course, a podcast episode about this quite a while ago, actually. The 10 heuristics for good UX. And, check that one out if you haven't listened to it. But principle 4 for usability is consistency and standards, which really boils down to if there are patterns people are familiar with, you can use them and you should use them. Don't break them simply for the sake of being different. So leveraging ideas from competitors or from anywhere else in the world that makes sense to solve problems is a good idea. If somebody has solved something in a really good way that makes sense, you can leverage those ideas, take a similar thought and use that to create a solution for your users. Now, that's not to say that you should wholesale copy what other people have done and pass that off as your own. But that is to say that you can take inspiration and use what other people use, the solutions that other people have implemented, and take the inspiration from that and use it to solve the problems for your users in a unique way that makes sense for them and for your business. So, this has come up in the work that we've been doing, that I've been doing frequently. So, I've been in a variety of different businesses and industries over my career. So I started in a highly competitive industry where, it was one of the top financial firms within the industry. Everybody would be familiar with it. But, we were in a highly competitive area where I was working, to the point where I had actually built out some tools to alert us within our product area if any of our competitors was making any changes to their products, so that we were up to the minute, up to date with changes happening among our competition. That's how intense it was, because we literally had to know if anything was happening in order to be able to react to it. So that was the level of competition that was happening, because we were talking hundreds of millions of dollars at stake if we weren't able to make adjustments real time to things that were happening. I went from there to an educational institution that was really at the forefront of what they were doing. And there was certainly competition within the higher education space, but nobody really doing anything like we were doing. And so, that put us out in front, and nobody doing it at the scale we were doing it. We were the largest and one of the only universities doing what we were doing. And so that, really put us in a league of our own. And so competition, though there's always competition, was a lot different. I did not spend a ton of time looking at direct competitors. We did spend time looking at the market, looking at the industry, looking at what other people were doing, but I did not spend a lot of time looking at our competition. And we didn't need to. I didn't need to do that in that role. Then from there moved to another role within the healthcare industry, where again, we were one of the top HSA companies in the industry. And, we stayed in touch with what other HSA companies were doing and, understood it. But again, it was more for, some of that general understanding. We didn't have to be incredibly reactive to, what our competition was doing, because we were a leader in the market. And so it was more about driving that forward. What else could we do to continue to be a leader? So and then from there moved into kind of my current role, where we are one of the leaders, but it is a very competitive landscape within the industry that we're in. And so looking closely at what our competitors are doing, not to copy them, but to understand what they are doing, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and where ours are. And, just to have that understanding, to, see how they are solving problems, how we're solving problems, what the differences are, and, be very, very in tune to that, because it is, not the same type of industry where it's, super cutthroat and we have to know everything down to the minute. And also not the type of industry where, we can't not pay attention to what other people are doing, because, we're such a market leader. We are, one of the top companies, but we are among other top companies as well. And so we have to be we still have to pay attention, but we're not going to be defined by our competitors. So, it comes back again to understanding your company, understanding your industry, understanding your product, and then from there, understanding your competition, but not letting it define you, and then leveraging that to help drive you forward, but really letting your users and their problems be the defining thing that drives your business and your product forward. All right, next question. How much will certifications help me? Now, in product and design, I can speak probably more to the product management side, though, as a hiring manager, I have definitely hired my fair share of UX designers into our teams. But, what we care about most is being able to do things. So, that's really what any team and any hiring manager cares about, is that you as a candidate, or you as a product manager, or you as a UX designer are able to do the things that the team needs you to do, that the company needs you to do, that they, as the hiring manager, are hiring you to do. So how much will a certification help you specifically as a product manager? Let's just take that as an example here. So I think that it really depends on a lot of things. There's multiple schools of thought, I think, when it comes to these. If there is somebody trying to sell you a product manager certification, they will tell you certainly that you have to have it, or that it will help you a great deal. And there is the other extreme of people who you won't find a shortage of them, who will tell you that all of them are absolute garbage, that certifications or credentials or anything like that for product management are pointless and useless, and don't waste your time or money because you don't need them. I don't know that either of those extremes are necessarily always correct. So, I think that it ultimately depends. So I think you need to ask yourself a few questions. So first off, what are you trying to accomplish with a certification in product management? There's lots of different companies and organizations that are offering, classes and certifications in product management, product ownership, which is different than product management. So we'll make that clarification. But a lot of companies treat those things as very similar or the same, which they shouldn't. But we won't get onto that tangent right now. So, what are you trying to accomplish with it? Now, certifications can be a good baseline and a good foundation for helping to do a lot of different things. So, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that could be a good starting point or a good foundation or a good thing to build some experience off of or some confidence with, or help you, get in the door, or, make some transition, or, do something else. So understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish is important. Remembering, keeping in mind that it is about being able to do things. That certifications by themselves, just being able to call out that you are certified in product management, it is, that in itself is probably not going to matter to most people in the field. It may, you may see that in applications or job postings or things like that, some recruiter has listed that as a thing. But once you start to get into the field, that starts to go away quite quickly. So understanding that, that alone isn't going to be very helpful without more to it. So, next, is it, understanding what you're trying to accomplish? And then is it the actual knowledge or the recognition or, something else? And then understanding how that will help you. So, getting, like I was saying, that foundational knowledge through some sort of certification or some sort of training program could be really, really beneficial if you're trying to transition into product management, or you're laying the foundation for your skills in order to, become a better product manager, or, trying to get product management established at your company, your organization, or whatever it is. So, your own personal knowledge and growth, there may be a lot of benefit there in helping you become a better product manager, if that's something that you're looking for. Or is it more about, having it and that recognition and, getting your foot in the door in some way? If that's the case, understanding that and making sure that it's the right choice, because that may work in some areas and not in others. So, there are a lot of companies and hiring managers and teams who may not look at any sort of product management certification as important in any way. So if you're just looking at a certification or a training or a class as a way, as something to put on your resume in order to break in, somewhere, that may not be necessarily the best way to do it. And so, talking to people at, maybe the companies that you're interested in or the teams that you're interested in, and understanding if that's something they value or not. And if it is, that may be a valuable thing to do. They may highly value or ascribe to a certain philosophy that, certain organizations or companies teach and do certifications in. If that's the case, doing that certification and training may be really beneficial so that you can speak that language and have that understanding and go in and talk with them in the same way if you're not familiar with it. So, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and then, is it the knowledge or is it the recognition? And if it's more on the side of the recognition, understanding if that's the right path for you, and then figuring out the best way to get there. Is it one of the certifications out there, or, are there other ways to do it? Can you gain the knowledge through, different means? We can all gain knowledge through different ways of doing things. And, always going back to that main point of, product and design are really about being able to do things, accomplish things, and show that. And so are there other ways of getting there? I think one of the problems that, the extreme that says that, certifications are all garbage and don't waste your time is that, it could be a lot easier to, go out and do a training and pass a course and put that on your resume than actually go out and build something and show that you've accomplished it. And so picking which of those two paths you want to go down and then actually going down that. So what's the best way to get to the goal that you want to achieve? Is it going through a certification, or is it actually going out and building something? And, I'd say in most cases, going out and actually building something is probably going to be your best bet. So just figuring out what is the best way to get to the goal that you have. Is it through, certifications, or is it through some other way? So it's not to say that, certifications or training programs or whatever it is are bad. You just need to understand what it is that you are trying to accomplish with it, why you're doing it. Are you targeting, specific companies or teams? Is that the best way to do it? And, what is the best way to achieve the goal that you are trying to get? So that is my take on how much certifications will help you. I know I've talked about this in the past, but it's a good topic. It's come up. And, we had Rachel Larson on one of our podcasts earlier this year. Great conversation. The head of learning, I believe, at Product School. So great organization within the product management community. So one of those that does offer the product management training and working hard to bring up the skills of product managers. So definitely not knocking on the certification programs and trainings at all, but making sure that you understand what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and the best way to get there. So definitely could be potentially a great path, especially for younger product managers or people trying to transition into the field. But just understand the why behind it. So that is some thoughts there. All right, next question: how do you deal with timelines from stakeholders? Holy cow! All right, let's tackle this one. This is the perennially difficult question that comes up frequently, and it's never an easy one. And this is probably something that every product manager faces all the time. And how do we deal with it? If you have thoughts, would love to hear some of your thoughts as well, and how you deal with it, and some of the strategies that you have and approaches that you take and frameworks that you use. Definitely not a one size fits all problem that we have to solve, but it is something that we all face all the time to varying degrees. So it really depends on your organization in a lot of ways. And, what is the culture of your organization? Is it, very driven by dates and project management, or is it more focused on product? Is it more of a product-led organization, focused on the outcomes that you're trying to drive, or the most likely some mix of those, depending on what is most important. And we probably all experience that at some point, where we try to be very outcome driven, but at some point, we become very, very date driven. And I wrote a little while ago, probably one of my favorite articles of all time, project thinking versus product thinking. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, on the different mindsets of this. So, and how we deal with it. And it really, that article came from this very problem. How do we think about these two different mindsets, the project mindset and the product mindset, and especially when they are in conflict. So, and this is actually something that, came up recently. So I'll give an example, but, kind of the framework, a broad framework that we have used and I've used is, start out, first off by understanding the why behind the timeline or the deadline with the stakeholders that you are working with. That is a good, just a good way to start any problem. Start with any problem is understand why, there is a timeline or a deadline behind something. And, a lot of times it can be, just that, we want to, have some accountability. I've heard that so many times is, we want to drive the accountability and, we want to make sure that we're getting things done. Or, there may be other reasons for it. There may be some sort of plan and, there may be multiple pieces of it or, a variety of other reasons. There may be some sort of upcoming conference or something. And we as a company want to announce this new feature at our conference. And so, we need to have it done and tested before that so that we can announce it and you'll be able to show it or that sort of thing. So understanding the why behind a timeline or a deadline from stakeholders or from your business, so important. And then being transparent about some of the difficulties or the constraints or the options. So, once, there's that understanding, having the discussion and being transparent about why that either may be difficult or some of the constraints as to, what may make that an impossible timeline to hit, or the concerns or risks or things like that, and just having that conversation. And then and this is, of course, is just kind of a general framework, but then getting skin in the game so that the stakeholders aren't kind of putting the onus onto a team to say, here's what I want, here's the timeline I want it, and I'm going to walk away and expect it to be delivered. That's an easy thing. It becomes much more of a collaborative effort when everybody has some skin in the game. And, once we've understood why, we're transparent about things. And then, they get to have some skin in the game too, as to what it will take to actually accomplish something like that. And oftentimes that may be that, have to make some difficult trade-offs as to what it will take to do something like that. And, executive A may have 3 things that they are looking to have done, but, they may have to pick one. And so all of a sudden it becomes very real. They now have a stake in this, and they need to pick between those things, and it can't be all of them. They have to decide what is the most important if we can only do one of them. So, understanding, being transparent, and making sure everybody's invested in what is happening and not just putting demands on the team. So, this happened to one of our teams. We got handed a timeline from a stakeholder, and we did just this, where we approached them to understand why this timeline, why it was, on a certain date, things needed to be done, and just to understand better. And we learned that this timeline came from an important customer, as many timelines often do. So we continue to dive deeper, not being satisfied with, important customer wants, such and such thing by such and such time. So we went to the customer to understand better, sat down with them and, discussed, what they were talking about in the timeline. We learned from them, and this is just awesome, that they literally just picked a date, an arbitrary date to just to have a date out there. It did not matter to them, this specific date. They had just picked one. And so it was like, oh my goodness, we literally could have gone down this road of literally everybody killing themselves over, getting something done for an important customer. over an arbitrary date. And so, in this discussion, we also were able to be transparent about different constraints and options, and actually dive deeper into some of the problems that they were trying to solve and how we could go about solving them. So not just getting requests from a customer and a date along with it and then go out and do it, but actually figure out what it is that we're trying to do and discuss different constraints and options so that we can actually put together a meaningful, good solution. And then getting everybody with some investment in this, some skin in the game to decide if you had to pick between all of these things that are happening right now, like what is the most important? Just saying that if we can't do all of these things, what would you say comes first and what comes after? And not necessarily allowing other people to do the prioritization for you, because I don't think that is a good plan in general, to outsource your prioritization to customers or to stakeholders. That is your job as a product manager and as a product team. But to get that input so that you have an understanding of, if they have to put things in a certain order, where are they putting their investment? Where would they say what comes first, what comes second, and what would they push off if they absolutely had to? And so doing that, it really, one, was obviously very, very helpful because we weren't stuck with any sort of arbitrary timeline, but also it became a much more meaningful conversation and discussion than simply being handed things. So that is just one example of dealing with timelines from stakeholders and customers. Obviously, it doesn't always turn out exactly like that, but really getting to the heart of understanding why, being transparent, and getting everybody invested, and getting some skin in the game so that it is not just about the team and what they are doing, but everybody has something on the line. So yeah, dealing with timelines from stakeholders. So another somewhat interesting one on customer advisory boards. So this one came up recently on doing customer advisory boards. So we've done a number of these in a variety of different ways in the past. And, all of these questions probably deserve, maybe like a full episode and somebody else to come in and kind of bounce around some ideas and discussion and whatnot. So, don't be surprised if we peel some of these questions out and, do some more in-depth discussion, because I think that would be interesting. But customer advisory boards, super interesting. If you haven't done them, the concept is basically, asking a group of customers to be like an advisory board, basically, like the name says, for a period of time, usually like a year. And you will meet with them a couple times during that year. What we've usually done is, send out some questions or discussion points or things like that prior to the meetings. And then everybody gets together and we have, some discussions on, what's going on in the market, what's going on with the product and our company, and, just really get some ideas around the, direction overall for, the industry, for the businesses, for our company, things like that. So our customer advisory boards, important. And should we do one? I think the answer to that is it depends. Kind of a recurring theme. And I think understanding a couple different things with your customer advisory board is really important. So first off, and I'll just caveat that with, we have, and right now we're kind of in this boat where we have, with my current company, we have one division, I guess, or one company within our company that does them, and they work really well. And we have another division or company within our umbrella of companies that I'm more focused on, where they have not really worked as well for a variety of reasons. And so, we've used other methods to kind of get feedback and to have, interactions and discussions with customers and things like that. And that has worked much better. And so there's not a one size fits all. If you're having customer advisory boards and they work well, awesome. If not, or if it's something that doesn't fit with your either with your company or your customers, that isn't necessarily something that you need to force. And in other companies as well, we've had similar experiences where we've both done them and have not done them and done other things. And it really just depends on the industry you're in, your company, your customers, and a variety of things. So I would ask a couple questions in setting it up. Like, first off, what is the purpose of your CAB or customer advisory board? I'll call it CAB from now on, just to stop repeating customer advisory board over and over. So what is the purpose of your CAB? Is it to gather information? Is it to help make product decisions, to make industry decisions, to get feedback, to keep a pulse on the market? Those are all really good things. And, just to really have a good understanding of what it is that you're trying to accomplish within the framework of your CAB, because, you're not going to be using it to get a ton of, specific feedback all the time, because it really is more of a once a quarter meeting, during the year. So it's not the time that you're going to be getting in-depth feedback, hands-on type things. It's much more higher level than that. So really understanding the purpose, setting the framework for that, so that it can be a productive thing. And then the next thing is, who do you have on the CAB? So, who are the customers that you're going to have in there? If it's, a very general one for your entire company, you're making sure you get a good cross section of your users and customers so that you're getting a good amount of feedback. Another thing that we found and we've talked about is making sure that you get the right people in there who have the right level of engagement. It is usually not as successful if you don't get customers who aren't willing to be really engaged in the process and help have discussion and help give thoughts on what their problems are, what's going on in the industry, things like that. So who you want to have in there, and at what level within their organizations do you need them to be at? Much more senior people, more working within the day-to-day operations. Does it need to be segmented? Are you really focused on a specific area within the industry or within a specific segment of your customers or user base? So who do you have on that board? And then finally, how do you structure the discussion to get good feedback on both what you're doing as a company, as within your product, as well as just what's going on in the industry? So it really shouldn't be necessarily like a user feedback session, because there are more productive ways to do that sort of thing. So making sure that you structure the discussion and some of the maybe pre-work or the questions that you send out beforehand to get the right level of feedback, the right conversation going, have the right dynamic within that discussion. So those are all some important considerations to have. And obviously, a CAB it can be an interesting selling feature. So not that you go out and anybody who signs up gets to be part of the advisory board going forward, but many large organizations are interested, especially at the enterprise level, that in helping to have those broader conversations. So the fact that you have an advisory board, and I know one of our rules for ours is that no new customers and no who especially that are going through the setup and integration and things like that. So you have to have be set up, have been with the company for a while, and then also it's not something that like you can buy your way into or something like that. So it's kind of an invitation thing, but the fact that it's there and it's getting consistent feedback, that's something that people value, is being able to give advice and advise on products that they care about. So having that opportunity to do something like that, so that can be an important thing for some organizations and some companies. So yeah, important things to consider with customer advisory boards, with CABs. Good things, not necessarily the end all be all though. So obviously you should be getting lots of feedback from lots of different avenues, and not all customer bases are good ones for CABs or customer advisory boards. So there are those that are more, maybe more hands off or not as centralized. And that's what we experience in kind of the area that I work in right now. It is less centralized and less set up well for a very formalized CAB. So that is something that we have found, and I've worked in other companies and organizations as well where that's the case too. And so less formal settings have tended to yield better results as far as feedback and discussion go. So finding what works for you and finding the way to get those the customer feedback, the discussion, some of the industry and market sentiment that is important for you to do your job. So just knowing that there are lots of tools that you can use and finding the right ones in order to get the information that you need. That probably the most important thing. And a customer advisory board is one of those things. It's not the only one. So final question here for today. We'll see how well this episode, how well you've liked this episode. It's been fun for me. So, maybe we'll do some more grab bags in the future and just answer questions and kind of bounce from topic to topic. It's kind of a fun format. How do you work with UX and development on discovery work? Oh man, this is such a good one. And this came up very specifically recently. So top of mind for me, but love this question. And I've seen it done both really, really poorly and really, really well. So let me give you a really bad example. This is probably one that many of us are familiar with. So product writes up requirements, hands them to UX. UX creates the mockups and designs, and everything gets them finalized, hands them over to engineering. Engineering then, with the final mockups and requirements, goes and builds it, and then comes back once it is finished and says, hey, it is finished. And then we deliver it to customers. Now that is the bad example. And I've seen that. And oh my goodness, please don't do it that way. It never ends well for anybody. A much better way is for product and UX and the business and everybody to work together on the discovery. And let me give you an example of what we do now. And obviously this isn't perfect. But how we work together right now is that we in fact do, as product and UX and engineering and business. So that's sales and marketing and our counterparts across the organization. We work together to discover problems wherever they might be, and really gain that deep understanding. And I do think that the primary responsibility for that lies with product management, though not the sole responsibility. And then product goes out and gathers the information, dives deeper into the problem to get a good understanding what is that problem? See it in action, see how users are either trying to solve it or are unable to solve it currently. And then we come back together as a team and have an initial meeting, product, UX, and engineering, and discuss the problem. Here's what it is, and really flesh out ideas. And just talk about, okay, here's what we've seen, here's the problem, and this is usually without, we may have some rough mock-ups and things like that, but we're just talking really about like problem, like, okay, here's what we're seeing. And then we come up with like lots of questions, like, okay, here's some additional questions we may not have thought of, like here's some considerations that we need. We take a whole bunch of notes, and then we take all of those away and we work to answer those questions. So that may involve some more discovery work, or that may involve some prototyping, or that may involve some proof of concept on engineering, or like some risk analysis or things like that, or some data. Like we may need to find some data and bring all of that back. So we do all of those things, and then we start to we come back together frequently to bring those answers back, that, okay, yeah, we've answered these questions. We've looked at the data. We've put together some potential mock-ups. We've done some prototyping. We've looked at it with a few users. We've asked these questions that we had in the original one. We've maybe even put together like just a rough proof of concept to actually show that technically we could achieve something like this. And once we start to answer those questions together as a team, then we start moving forward more. We start to actually put together maybe some higher fidelity mock-ups and maybe some more prototypes, and work together to refine each of those things. Once we've started to answer the questions, to address some of the risks, to share our knowledge, and iterate from there to the point where we have maybe some really good idea of where we're going to go. And then we start to look at maybe some phases that we could start to attack it in. What do we want to approach first? How could we get this into the hands of users early to test out some of these things? And then we will our UX team will start to create the UX around that, the designs and the flow and everything. And then we may answer some more product questions, get some more feedback, and start to pull all of that together. So it's an amazing, fun, messy process, much more than the writing of requirements, which I really don't like the word requirements, or the phrase, especially early in the process, because it doesn't allow for much room of discussion and debate or things like that. And so I always shy away from the word requirements, just because I think it's just too loaded. But we have all of this kind of messiness flowing together as we have this shared understanding building of, what is the problem that we're solving? What are the different ways that we can solve it? What are the questions we need to answer? And we build that up together as a team. And we start to see the solution come together, start to test out some of our assumptions, and then start to look at the different phases that we could bring it in. We don't want to build something necessarily complete and then get that out. We want to say, okay, what is the simplest, best version that we could build first? And I'm thinking of a few different things that we've been working on. How can we kind of piece this, not to put out a crappy first version, but what is a chunk of this that we could take, that we could do well, and get that out in front of users that they could use for some portion of the work, and then start building on that, so that it's many of you have probably seen the example of like the skateboard and the scooter to the bicycle to the car, not even thinking in those terms, but more of like a usable car, and then becoming a better car and a better car and a better car, things like that. Like, it's very, very much a small portion that is good and usable in its own way, and for what it's intended to do. And it may just be some small portion of the thing. Then we can add, additional, the next piece of functionality that adds, the next part to it. So you may be able to do one thing, and you can do that really well. And then you can do the next thing, and you can do that really well. And then adding each of those incrementally. So that is kind of our messy development and discovery process. And it is, again, if you've been in it, it is not a cut and dry type of thing, but it can be very, very effective. And managing that it's one of the exciting things, but it's also one of those things that the more experience you have in it, the better you get at it. And it's part of the product management process that I say is one of the more challenging things, but also the more exciting things, because there is no, I don't think there's any way that you can, take a class and learn like, okay, here's how you manage the messiness of this. You have to get in there and experience it and do it a lot to be able to pull all of those things together. But it's much more about collaboration and shared understanding than defining a document, handing that to somebody, and then having that UX handed to engineering and things like that. If you're doing that, you need to start to get away from it and really work collaboratively and iteratively on some of the messiness and just enjoy that process. So that is all of the questions for today. We could go on with a few more, but I think that is a good episode. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hit us up, hit me up. If you did or didn't, give us the feedback. Let us know. If you've got questions, send them over. At Kyle Larry Evans is my Twitter. At prod_by_design. Prod by Design is our Twitter handle for the podcast. You can definitely follow us wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on social media. And we will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can find out more about us and our podcast on our website at productbydesign.co. You can also follow us on Twitter at prodbydesign. That's at prod_by_design. You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Larry Evans, and you can also find Eva on Twitter at Yan Chow Chow. See you next time.